What's up, guys? Welcome back to OverTakes. This is Misfit, and today we're going to be recapping the first couple rounds of the Midseason Madness Tournament. We're going to talk a little bit about the matches, what's been going on with the tournament so far, do a couple of predictions on the next two rounds, talk about brackets and see where we're at. Not looking too good right now, but you know, it's a tournament. It always happens. But before I dive into that, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me. All of your support is greatly appreciated, whether you've been here for 1 day or 5 years. If you're new, thanks a lot for stopping by. I do Overwatch League content 2 to 3 times a week, and depending on what's going on, during the breaks I usually do a couple episodes, maybe a power ranking episode for the upcoming stage or tournament cycle, as we call it now. Let's get into some of this. Okay, so we had the tournament start Monday night. Everything is on Hawaii time, and it's a little bit later if you're on the East Coast, starting, things started at 7 o'clock, ending somewhere around 1:30, or last night, somewhere around 2:30 or 3-ish. But the matches were good, so it was kind of okay. I watched the final match this morning. It's, like I said, it's Thursday. Doing this, really going to do a quick episode today. Talk about some of the stuff that happened, do a couple of predictions, and we'll get back together early in the week and go over the whole thing. So far the tournament, let's just talk about the macro of the whole thing. Thought it would be a lot closer on the first day, a couple of the matches, but the way things played out, they were pretty quick, pretty decisive, and you could even say day two winners round was the same thing. So the first couple of days of the bracket were pretty decisive wins for teams. A couple of surprises for sure. So we had some close matches later on, but the first 2 days were kind of okay. And I'm going to get this out of the way now. I don't like the way they're setting this tournament up from the aesthetics standpoint. Yeah, okay, you can say what you want, but it's $1 million tournament, and I don't know what the team's feelings are on any of this or what, but it just looks very thrown together. The casters and the desk aren't even in Hawaii. Danny's there, but it just feels like they still think it's, and I'm not denying that there's COVID and there are situations in China where the teams couldn't travel. I get this. But it feels like we're still in 2020 and we're just hacking things together, and it's like a regular season game in a hotel conference room. It just doesn't feel professional for me for a big money tournament. And I know it's not the production people, but the overall league standpoint on this, I don't understand why it's this way. I know you have to get teams out to Hawaii and all that stuff, sure, and I'm not going to do the other esports do X, because they have their issues too. League of Legends, Valorant, name your league. There's situations where things don't happen. I would love to have seen it in front of a live audience. Okay, so everything played out so it's not. But at least give it a feel of a tournament and not a bunch of kids playing Overwatch in a fucking hotel room with a tarp behind them. It doesn't have the feel of a big tournament to me. It has a feel of week 3 in the middle of a tournament cycle. The matches themselves feel important and big, but just when you're watching it, you're not getting the vibe of, I would have loved to have seen the casters there, the desk there, do interviews with league people, have players come to the desk, things like that, things like they did in Blizzard Arena. It doesn't have to be that situation where there's a giant stage or anything like that, but at least it's something. And it's not like it was short notice. They decided this somewhere in March. I guess it's short notice for an event. But anyway, I wanted to get that out of the way. There was just the aesthetics and stuff just really didn't do it for me from that perspective. And they need to polish this up and improve it, because if the situation occurs again for the playoffs and we're not doing it live, I don't like that optic either. That's not very it's not very good. But they need to make it at least somewhat, at least have a stage in China, a stage in the US, Hawaii, or wherever you're doing it from. And you're going to have situations where you're going to at least have a closed audience there if you can't get everybody in the same building. So it's at least something. Anyway, that's my thoughts on that. Let's get to the matches. I spent a lot of time on the eye test and all that kind of stuff. All right, so let's run it down right now. Winners bracket. First round, we had Atlanta taking on London. Atlanta loses to London 3-1. That was a surprise to me. A lot of people had London in that. I thought Atlanta was a step ahead of them in certain things as far as tournament play and experiencing these things and all that. But London came out and they looked really good across the board. They played just phenomenal against the Atlanta Reign, and they took them down rather handily, in my opinion. Next up, we had Houston dismantling Florida. They just destroyed them. I didn't think Florida had a chance. I thought it'd be 3-1, but Houston absolutely tore them to pieces. And that's concerning if you're a Mayhem fan, but we'll talk more about them later. Next up, we had Shanghai doing what we kind of expected to Toronto, 3-0 them. And then another kind of shocker to me was the scoreline in this, but we do have the Philadelphia had issues, etc. But Hangzhou came out and they just dominated Philadelphia. You know, I'm a big fan of Alpha Yi and Shy, but they just took over, and the support line for Hangzhou was phenomenal. I can't say enough about them. They just have been playing fantastic. Okay, so we had that. Now the next round, we had the teams picking who they were going to play. San Francisco took London. Gladiators took Houston. The Dynasty took the Spark. And then Dallas ended up with Shanghai. So San Francisco played it was a tight match, I thought, against London. London played well, even though they lost. I thought there was nothing for them to be ashamed of in that. I thought they did a fantastic job, but San Francisco's just that much better than them. It's the definite tier break kind of scenario where you have that mid-table in NA and the top 3 teams right now, I would go with, maybe even top 2, and then another break, or maybe even just a top 2, and then you chunk the rest of them in the middle, as we've seen in this tournament so far. NA-wise, that is. So London put up a fight, but they lost to San Francisco. We had San Francisco in that one. I think I had them. They were playing somebody else in my bracket. Okay, so as far as I had for that round, winners round 1, obviously I got a couple of picks wrong. I had the Shock taking on the Outlaws because I thought Atlanta would win. And I had Seoul taking Atlanta. Glad's playing the Spark, and I had Dragon's Fuel. So I got one not prediction. The one thing I knew was nobody wanted to pick Shanghai. At least I had that. So I did have San Francisco advancing. I got the top side of the bracket right, I guess. That was kind of not a cut and dry, but the two teams that were on the top side that were really you're looking at San Francisco and Shanghai and going, okay, Dallas could give a fight. I don't know. London probably could do something. They did a little bit, but you know, it is what it is. Mid-table and all that kind of thing. But next match on that side of the bracket, I'm not going in order of time here. I'm just going the way the bracket's set up. Shanghai destroyed Dallas. Dallas just was boomed from the start in this one. It wasn't even close. Shanghai just rolled over them, and Dallas fans, I would be a little concerned right now with their grasp on Overwatch 2 in the metas and stuff. They just did not look great. Okay, now to the other side of the bracket in the winners round 2. Gladiators took care of Houston, no problem, 3-0. I kind of expected that. They had a little thing with Houston with the 2 C9s the last time they played. Gladiators weren't quite at the point they are now as far as versatility, Patapan playing on top of his game and whatnot, what have you. Now, the last match of the night was the Baffler. This is the bracket buster, the destruction of a good chunk of the brackets. Hangzhou shutting out the Dynasty. The Dynasty looked terrible. And you guys know I'm a Prophet stan. Prophet had an unbelievable first point of the first map. That was it. Gone from there. Alpha Yi and Shy took care of Fitz and Prophet like they weren't even there. And they just played a complete game. I don't know what... Changoon does know the players on Seoul. Bear that in mind. He didn't Changoon anything in the first 2 matches. So be wary tonight. I would be wary a little bit. If you're a Hangzhou fan, keep that in mind tonight. They're playing the Gladiators. So he could bring out something real special for this one. Anyway, Seoul looked absolutely lost. They did not... For as good as they looked for the first stage and for... I mean, there were some hiccups in the first stage, not going to lie. And they had a couple of matches where they were kind of okay, but they showed that they're the best team in the East. as far as we knew. Now, I'm not going to say Hangzhou is. I'm going to say something that if you're an APAC fan that you probably didn't want to see, and that's Shanghai coming back around and playing where they should be. And they're looking like the tops in the East, which is going to make this match fabulous. Right now, the two matches that we have coming up, we'll get there in a second. But for tonight, San Francisco, Shanghai, Gladiators, Spark, you can't ask for more. That just seems phenomenal. And then you throw in the two losers match rounds. We have a potential just El Clasico fiesta from fucking hell with Philadelphia and Florida. So that could be entertaining. And then we have Houston and Atlanta, which could be entertaining as well. But I just don't know what happened to Seoul. They lost their mojo. They had such good performances, cohesion, all of the things that you talk about when you talk about a team playing at a high level. They were there. They had none of that against Hangzhou. Hangzhou just owned them. They've seen each other twice this year. I think they might have played in a playoff as well in the kickoff clash. But you think they would have a grasp on what Hangzhou could do. Now, and Seoul absolutely destroyed them early in the year. Now, I don't know what Hangzhou did, but whatever they did, they came out and they took care of business. I got to hand it to them. And I was, backing Hangzhou early on. They were up and down this cycle, but hey, they're in the semis, right? I mean, what can you, or the quarters, whatever you want to call this round. Round 3 of the tournament. I didn't think they were going to get that far. I thought they would have been down in the losers bracket. Maybe possibly got through a match down there. So let's talk losers round. This is where it got fun, except for one team that did not have fun in this. Well, I mean, obviously, there are a few teams that did not have fun. There was one match that I thought was, once I saw it lined up, I thought was going to be probably the best match that we had, and that was Philadelphia and Dallas. And Philly just destroyed Dallas. There are points when Dallas just gets boomed. The Shanghai match aside, Shanghai's playing at a level close to the Shock and the Gladiators since the first week of the tournament cycle when they went 0-2 and didn't win a map. Since then, they've figured it out, and they're insane. So I don't necessarily give that match. The 3-0 is concerning, but Dallas they just don't look like they have it right now. And it's very odd to say in a team with Sparkle, Fearless, Hanbin, Fielder, I continue and go down the cycle here of the players, but there's something lacking, something missing, and I don't know exactly what it is, but Carrillo did not look fantastic at all. I don't know where that leaves Dallas as far as DPS goes. They were running some of this Tracer Genji stuff, and it was fast-paced, and it was go, and Philadelphia, on the whole, their play style just countered that stuff at the start, and it felt like Dallas just did not know where to go after that. But tough loss for Dallas. They need to do some work in the couple of week break we have. I don't know what patch, if they're going to go into the last patch of the last beta, where we had Junker Queen and all of the other changes, Moira, Mercy, etc. I don't know if they're running that, but they need to work on some stuff, and because they have the talent, as is said a lot about teams, but they just failed in that one. Florida-London was an interesting match. The next match we'll talk about really quick. Florida wins 3-2. Looked like London was just destroying Florida. Florida looked like absolute hot garbage for the first 5 maps that they played in this tournament. But I don't know what happened on Gibraltar. They never have good offense on Gibraltar. But they stopped London, and it clicked. Eggsy came alive, and you could see the tide turning. You're like, all right, they got a map. And then they went to the push map, and they kind of dominated that one too. I felt London was boomed after that, and Florida just won it 3-2. I wouldn't say it's a bad tournament for London. You won a match, you beat a team that you quote unquote shouldn't have, even though they beat them earlier in the year. They're a team to look at in that mid pack with Toronto, Florida. I still think they're better than Florida and Toronto at this point. The way they play is a lot more cohesive, a lot more team-oriented. They know what each other are doing. They're on the same page. Florida, though they're in the next round after beating London, they still have the same issues that they have been. and that's diving in too deep. They played a lot of RuPaul instead of Majed, which I don't know if that's a counter to that and just like kind of working with Majed to control the aggression and work on some things. But they did play better when Majed was in there. So I just think Florida also has some things to work on when they get out of this tournament at whatever point that will be. I'm not confident in some of the decision-making that they do, but they managed to pull out a win against London, who I think is the better team right now, and I still do, and I stand by it. But Florida came back, they boomed them, and Eggsy got hot, which is very important for that team because Eggsy was brought in for that reason, to be that guy. And he was that guy. And, you had guys like Checkmate and someone playing very well, too. They did a good job against London late. Otherwise, it looked like it was going to be a travesty for Florida. And the wondering if they should have been in the tournament. And I was kind of on that after watching some of them. Like, they didn't even look like they could beat Boston or New York at that point. All right, let's start hitting the late night stuff. We'll hit the Houston-Toronto. For some reason, this match went 3-2. Toronto stepped up a little bit. They played well against Houston, and Muse's Doomfist was going up against Dante really well for most of this match. They were going back and forth, but Houston comes out ahead. They're the better team for sure. If I'm a Houston fan or looking at this, I would have liked to have seen Houston maybe 3-1 them. I think that would have been a better look. But you know what? Toronto came to play. They showed that they're at least viable in these tournaments. Kind of like a little bit like Florida did late. You're like, all right, you can hang with some of these teams. But Houston was a better team than London at that point, I think you could say. Although right now maybe you go London, Houston kind of on the same level. So that match was a good match. The next match, though, this match was crazy. Atlanta, and apparently, losing the first round, you're like, okay, Atlanta's doing their thing, and they're just boomed or whatever. They can't beat London. You come in, you're like, you see Seoul on there. You're like, Dynasty just got had by Hangzhou. They're pissed. They're going to make a bottom bracket run. And Seoul had points where they looked like the team that you were watching earlier in the tournament cycle during the qualifiers, where, Prophet's going off, he's hitting shots, Fitz is playing well, Smurf is doing his thing. But Atlanta were just doing things better, and I feel like they had Seoul, even on the maps that Seoul won. But the thing in watching that match is it wasn't that you're waiting for Prophet to do something. It just, I thought that Atlanta did a good job of neutralizing him and keeping him honest in some of the situations, and especially in that last map. Venom took care of him a couple of times on Night Market on Lijiang. And some of the picks were, I thought Chengun was back. Prophet going Farah to start. All right, yeah, it's Li Jiang. You got the tower. Probably on the assumption that Atlanta's running Rush. You want to use the Farah. But the minute you see that, you got to back it out. And the only guy that was keeping them in any of this match, I mean, Prophet had moments, Fitz had moments, but Stalker, when Stalker was in there, he was unstoppable. He was the only guy neutralizing Kai and taking care of a lot of the business playing Sojourn, and he was fantastic. And then they had him on Tracer at points. I don't know. It just, that last map, if you're Soul, you want that back, and you want to rethink that. Go with what brought you there. Stalker on Sojourn, put Prophet on Tracer, and at least you have guys on heroes that, could have the potential to dominate. Would it be the ideal scenario in some of it? No, but neither is Cassidy, and that kind of worked. Atlanta, I'm not taking anything away from Atlanta here. Atlanta played well, especially their DPS line, whether it was Nero and Kai or Kai and Venom. They looked fantastic. Ultraviolet and OG played a fantastic match, and so did Hawk. They were out of this world. And you know what? They belong in the next round in the loser's bracket, and Seoul deserved to go home. If you told me that Seoul was going to get 2 maps and be knocked out before Thursday night, I would have called you a crackhead. This is the most surprising thing. It's more surprising than Dallas. Dallas, I could see a world where they didn't end up, maybe in the next round of the loser's bracket. A situation where they played Philly. I wouldn't expect them to only win 1 map of the 2 matches they played. Overall, the loser's match bracket portion of the show has been phenomenal. The comeback by Florida was insane. Houston and Toronto having a great match. And then that last match was just phenomenal. Go back and watch it if you hadn't. I know it was on really late if you were East Coast. It was even on late if you were West Coast. But watch that match. It was fantastic. It's worth another watch through. Atlanta played fantastically. That's the results we've had. All right, so we've gone over the matches that we've had. We've had surprises, brackets destruction, all the stuff. My winner is still in there. San Francisco Shock, winnable. This is winnable. I'm telling you, I need... But in order to move up in the rankings, I'm going to throw this out there. I need Shanghai and the Gladiators to win, or be in the final, and one of them to win. That way I get my crystal ball pick right. Anyway, gambling me aside, let's talk what we got on tap for tonight. Shock Dragons, Glads Hangzhou. Actually, let's go over it in the timeline that they have. Losers round first. First match, Atlanta Houston. Second match, Florida Philly. Then next up we have Hangzhou and the Glads, finishing off with Shanghai and the Shock. It's going to be fun. I'm not going to go crystal ball after this. We're just going to talk about these matches today. Early in the week next week, we'll talk about all the stuff, go over my bracket, and see how destroyed it was. Hopefully I got something right. But let's talk losers bracket first. Here we go. Atlanta, Houston. Both of these teams played really well. Tough pick. But here's my thoughts on this. I'm going to go with Atlanta because as bad as that loss was that they had to London, confidence-wise, beating Seoul the way they did, that is exactly what they needed. I don't think it's enough to make them overconfident, but they beat the best team in the East in the losers bracket in an elimination game. They kept themselves alive. They played fantastic. Kai was on fire. Nero looked good when he was in there, and so did Venom. Support line, nothing to worry about there, and Hawk has been phenomenal. Houston, they have hiccups here and there. This is my reasoning on my pick here. I'm going to take Atlanta. Houston has hiccups. They're not the best in these playoff situations, though they've gone further than they have, I believe, yet as a franchise. So third round, they might have done something in one of those tournaments in 2020. I don't remember, 2021. I kind of don't remember all of them. Unless you count maybe, I think they were in a stage 1 finals or semis in 2018. This is as far as they gotten since then. Anyway, this is... Even though they got eliminated in the second round, they have been making some noise. They've been playing well. They did not play well against the Gladiators, but the Gladiators are a different animal. They beat Toronto and Florida, two teams that they should have beaten. Two teams I expect them to beat. Atlanta, I expect them to be on the same level as them, but here's my point. Atlanta right now with Kai and Nero. Now, Houston can beat them. They have merit. They have a fantastic support line in Lastro and Iris. And then you put in Pelican and you get him on his game. Tanks are... I like Hawk better than Dante or Piggy right now. I think he's focused and he has just been playing... Whatever he's been on has looked pretty good. So I'm looking at Atlanta in this. I'm going to go 3-2. The losers bracket's going to be 3-2 land. At least in that match. Next match, Philadelphia, Florida. Florida had a scrape to come back and beat London, and I think London's better than them. I think Florida might have gassed themselves in that comeback. I think Philadelphia got bested by Hangzhou. They had the COVID thing. I think they might be okay after destroying Dallas. Confidence comes back, kind of like with Atlanta. I think Philadelphia, at this moment in time, is vastly better and more equipped for tournament play than Florida. But Philadelphia's better than Florida in a lot of respects. I think Eggsy playing like he's been playing and Checkmate playing like he's been playing has been good for the team. I do think right now, though, I like Fixa and Aim God better than I like Majed, Rupel, Onimo. I like it better than that. And I'm going to go with the Belisariya Fury over someone. They play more controlled. And in a situation like this, you don't need your tank getting picked early and stuff like that. Someone played good against London late. Last couple of maps, he played decently. But there's only so far that Eggsy can bail them out. And I think this is where it ends. And I think your MN3 Zest, I think they're going to have just some unbelievable plays here. This could also be a clown fiesta of spaghetti dropping, whatever you're doing with your pasta, throwing it against the wall. I don't know. It could be another scenario like that where we have C9s all over the place and who knows who wins. I'm calling Philadelphia 3-1. Florida loses on a C9. There. Okay. We'll call it that. Now, let's move on to the meaty matches. Those matches are good, but now we're getting better. Late night, we got some fucking bangers. All right. Gladiators Hangzhou. Hangzhou's playing at a different level than they've played almost all year, really. I like this matchup for the Gladiators, though. I like Reiner better than I like Bernard and Gushweg, even though they've been playing really well. The support line of the Gladiators is the linchpin, and the key for me to take the Gladiators in this, I think it's going to be close. 3-1 close. Gladiators. I think Alpha Yi and Shy are going to give them fits, and Patapan and Kevster are going to be in for a battle. I think this is going to be the fun thing to watch, is the 4 DPS on both of these teams just go at it. It's kind of like we had with Philadelphia and Hangzhou, and Seoul and Hangzhou, and Hangzhou came out on top of those, and they were probably the two of the best Eastern DPS lines, if not the two best. Maybe not anymore. Them and Shanghai might have something to... All the DPS lines in the East of the teams that are here are just insano. But I think they're going to give Kevster and Patapan or Ons a battle. I think this is going to be a fun one, but I do think the Gladiators win 3-1 close. Final match of the night, San Francisco and Shanghai. Now we're getting somewhere. Now, this is rough for me because I have San Francisco going to the finals and winning this from the winner's bracket through. Shanghai has been looking phenomenal. So is the Shock. But the Shock have some things here and there. I get a little tensed up when I watch them. Like, uh-oh, this might not work. But somebody bails them out. Usually proper. But proper Kilo Sam, I like that. Against essentially Lip Fleta. Man, that's a hard call. I call it kind of a wash. I kind of would have to go with Shanghai slight edge there. And that's mostly the lip factor. But support line, I kind of am feeling Izayaki and Li Gong lately. I think they might have a slight edge on Finn and Violet, depending on what's going on there. But San Francisco this is a really hard pick. San Francisco in this iteration of the beta that they're playing on this stage, they looked a lot better than they did, even though they won handily most of their matches in Kickoff Clash regular season. They failed in the tournament. But here, I think they're looking good. They looked really good against London. They knew what they were doing. London was playing full force and were giving them a battle. But in the end, they kind of took care of business when they had to, which is something they didn't do in the last tournament, which I kind of like. And I think this is playing into their favor a little bit. The heroes that they can play. I'm going to go 3-2. And this is one of those, if Shanghai wins, I'm not surprised at all. So I got San Francisco 3-2. Couple of good matches, couple of 3-1s. 1-3-1, I don't think it's going to be necessarily a close one. One I think is Glad's Hangzhou. I just think the Glads are a little bit better. But that is my predictions and a little recap. So what's going to happen is, obviously, early in the week, we're going to do a full wrap-up of the tournament, winners, talk a couple of the, obviously talk the final match. Even if it's a 4-0, we'll dive into it a little bit. Talk about that, give final thoughts on the tournament and all those kind of things. And then from there, I'm going to take a few days off. We got, I believe, 2 weekends off. Picks back up August 11th. And in between, I'm going to post a couple of things, maybe a first half wrap-up, where I think teams are. Obviously, we'll do a power ranking and start diving into the second half of the season when we get what patch we're running on and maps and all that stuff. I'll definitely keep you guys updated. Okay, so that is going to do it for this mid-tournament episode. Thanks a lot for joining me. All of your support's greatly, greatly appreciated, guys. I really do mean that. And if you're new, thanks a lot for sticking around. If you could hit a like, hit a subscribe, that would be fantastic. Helps me out in the algorithms. Gets more people in. We can talk more Overwatch League. That's all this is about. And remember, guys, open forum, comments down below. Let's talk about the matches that happened. If your team got beat or still going, let's talk about it. This is Misfit. I'm out. Everybody stay safe. Have a good rest of your day, and I will talk to you on the next one.